Have you ever had a game so bad that you just toss it aside because it's unplayable? You know, frustrating controls, poor looking designs, and slow movements. There's a little secret you should know about games you toss aside. They're actually pretty good. In today's video, we'll show you games that are so bad, they're good. Resident Evil 6. You weren't expecting this on this list, right? This game has had 4 bloated campaigns, and out of all, only 1.5 of them are good. The rest are just so bleak and filled with unnecessary action that doesn't put the series in the best light. The game only needed some careful editing, and it would have been a more refined, balanced action horror game that cut between the different characters and only kept the best set pieces. The gameplay isn't exactly the most difficult or boring. For starters, the controls in Resident Evil 6 allow for a lot more self-expression for the player than any previous game. You can slide around, crawl on your back, use deadly melee moves to perform quick counter shots. It's bad, but it's also good then. If you've tossed the game aside, you should consider picking it up and try checking out the Mercenaries mode. Call of Juarez: The Cartel. Ubisoft has been known to be a shaky game developer. Sometimes their games are top-notch and other times it's just blah. Although many gamers enjoy their games, they just couldn't help but call out the Call of Juarez: The Cartel game. There were several things wrong with the game that went beyond the gameplay. Some players called the game out for being racist, and others claimed the game didn't meet up with the traditional game standards. The game certainly didn't meet up with the expectations that Ubisoft had for it, but so far, it hasn't been 100% terrible. It may be mediocre, but if you're in the mood for it, mediocre could be pretty fun. Soldier of Fortune: Payback. Game franchises are really exciting, and some developers know just how to captivate the gamers and keep them on their paths. Well, some developers just know how to do that. Take the Soldier of Fortune: Payback, for example. It made its way to the PS3 and the Xbox 360 with the hopes of becoming a franchise. Sadly, it didn't make the cut. Problem with this game was mostly the gameplay. To begin with, it is a first-person shooters game, and the market is pretty competitive. For a game that isn't all that good, its chances of remaining relevant are slim. In all, it isn't exactly a great game, but some perks make it worth the play. Gamers tend to love AI, and this gameplay offers a repetitive nature that makes it interesting at the very least. The game also has an exaggerated ultra-violence, which is a pretty nice touch to the gameplay, and all gamers know that everyone likes to mess things up, and that would be at least save a bad shooter in this game. If you look at it in the basic first-person shooter sense, Payback is a pretty competent game. Two Worlds. Role-playing games are beyond good. They're great, and to make good role-playing game, different elements have to be put together. I mean, you just can't create a role-playing game shabbily and expect it to be great. That's the mistake the developers of Two Worlds made while creating the game. They failed to create a good world in either of their worlds. The game developers hoped that Two Worlds would be a strong rivalry against the successful Oblivion, but they were wrong. It was a pretty embarrassing replica if you ask me. For starters, the game's dialogue isn't just boring, but it was equally awful. I mean, it was so bad that a dubbed movie was 10 times better than it. You can give it a try if you want to understand what I mean. Chances are you won't because of the terrible dialogue. It has an impressive gameplay anyway, good controls, nice graphics, and a pretty decent storyline. The dialogue just doesn't cut it. 50 Cent: Blood on the Sand. Gamers tend to go for games about popular people, so there's no shame in buying a bad game about 50 Cent. 50 Cent was one of the hottest rappers about a decade ago, but since he turned his music making down, he's had to stay relevant in some other ways. So what did he do? He made a video game of himself where he fought against underworld gangsters. His first game, Bulletproof, was pretty good, so good that it had a prequel, Blood on the Sand. Oh, how much he wishes he did. The game just wasn't what players expected, you know? It had an urban warzone setting that just didn't sync, and the controls were pretty frustrating as well. This game is so bad that the only thing that makes it good is that you rarely get the chance to be 50 Cent and play 50 Cent while fighting a bunch of terrorists. BloodRayne. Everyone who had a glance at BloodRayne's cover expected it to be the game of the year. I mean, it had it all. Vampires, blood and gore, a sexy redhead, and a mature story. What more would a gamer who enjoys a raunchy stories want? BloodRayne just didn't meet up to the expectations. It was just a mediocre product that tried to take a stance in the game world by selling its over-sexualized heroine. The gameplay wasn't exactly review-worthy, but it ended up having a rib-cracking narrative. The game had a sequel, which was a lot better than it, but if you want to have a good laugh, you should give the original a try. South Park. Anyone who has spent time playing games will know for a fact that South Park games haven't exactly been received warmly by gamers. Don't get me wrong, South Park remains one of the best satires on television, but it really should have stayed like that, a TV show. The South Park game was just a 3D mess that didn't even do as little as capture the satiric idea from the original. The game was a generic first-person shooter throwing you into a badly rendered South Park with horrific character animations and a pretty terrible gameplay. Anyone with a rave for South Park would certainly love to give this game a try. It's worth it, but for others, it's just a boring game. Deadly Premonition. When it comes to games that are so bad but somewhat manageable to play, Deadly Premonition tops the list. In the gameplay sense, it feels like an unlicensed Twin Peaks game that's part fan fiction, part original narrative. To start with, the game has bad mechanics all around. The shooting is harder to get used to than it should be with other games, and it is oftentimes awkward. The driving isn't exactly thrilling, and the voiceover acting is terribly out of sync, laughably bad, and it'd make you want to shut down your system. I bet you're wondering, what makes the game playable? Well, the faults of this game only add to the game's charm, and it makes it more challenging and somewhat exciting. It's pretty easy to play once you get past the rough edges, and you will surely enjoy the unique survival horror experience. Ricochet. Not many gamers know about Ricochet. Trust me, that's not a problem. The problem many people have with Ricochet is that it's simple, and it isn't challenging at all. Literally anyone can jump in and start affecting the match. The game has a small play space that could be both annoying and sometimes interesting. There's little room to maneuver on each, which means to take your opponents out, you either need to knock them out of the air or ping them off their platform with a disc or two. Ricochet may not be the first choice for gamers who enjoy competitive first-person shooters, but it ranks among a couple of other games in a cheap pinball machine. Layers of Fear. For many gamers who do not get a lot of horror actions, Layers of Fear may be the scariest game you've played, but believe me, it's not that scary. The game's a first-person haunted house game where you play as a tortured artist slowly losing their mind. You can expect to see animated baby dolls, hallways that change when you look away, and plenty of messages left on the wall in something that looks like blood. May give you a scare on the first play, but as soon as you realize that everything can be predicted, pretty much takes the fun out of it. The tricks are repeated over and over again. It doesn't mean it's not good enough to play. The game is funny sometimes, like when one of the baby dolls sprints down the hall and bonks their head on a dresser. If you're startled by the tiniest scares, then you should certainly give this a try. It's worth the play. Which of these games would you like to check out? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to this channel.